Two, one, and welcome to episode 3 of Fantastic Chats. My name is Neophant. I'll be your host, but not necessarily for the entirety of the episode, because today we've got my regular co-hosting partner, AngryBlackManta.
Yo, how's it going?
And we've also got our other podcasting host, Raquel.
Hello, lovely internet people who enjoy Harry Potter.
So, as we had discussed from last week's episode, we wanted to start doing a review, or not necessarily a review, but a discussion of every chapter of Harry Potter, of the Harry Potter book franchise, starting with chapter 1 of the very first book of the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And I kind of wanted to give the discussion over to AngryBlackManta, because we had all, throughout the week, reread through the chapter.
Was that my cue?
Not necessarily. Yeah, no worries.
Alright, cool. Alright, so yeah, this is the first chapter of the Philosopher's Stone, as I guess I will call it, even though I am American. But yeah, this book is, as of I think last year, 20 years old. Like, I can't even. That seems so weird.
It doesn't feel like it's been 20
old,
years, though.
I guess,
yeah.
Wow. So yeah, first chapter, The Boy Who Lived. So in this first chapter, we have we're introduced to. Well, we're kind of introduced to Harry. But we're kind of more. I guess it's more focused on first the Dursleys, or Vernon Dursley, which I think is kind of like an odd. Now that I think about it, it's kind of an odd character to start this book with, but there you go. And then we get an introduction to his life, his very mundane and unimaginative and just super normal life, I guess. We get an introduction to Dudley, who is, I guess, 1 year old at this point, and we kind of see some weird goings on in the world. A lot of weird people are coming out and they're celebrating, and it's kind of freaking him out, I guess.
Yeah,
so
it's interesting to see that the first chapter of this book mostly seems to revolve around the Dursleys, or more in particular, Vernon Dursley, for a good portion of the first pages.
Yeah, why do you think that is? I mean, because like I said, that's kind of a weird choice.
I feel like it's kind of unofficially a prologue. Like, if it had been called Prologue, The Boy Who Lived, it wouldn't have made any difference. I don't know. Ugh. Gosh, I regret starting to speak.
No worries. For me, I like to think that the book first concentrates on Vernon Dursley, because you kind of want to see what the mundane life of the Muggle world is like. You want to see, like, how absolutely atypical or typical and boring the regular world is, and then in later chapters, I guess it's going to contrast with how magical the magical world is. So that's part of what I think J.K. Rowling was going for when she kind of first writes her first few pages from the perspective of Vernon.
Yeah, it's almost like this is what you don't want to be, which makes
Harry
being a wizard more exciting, and wow, Harry's a wizard.
Yeah, I think you guys are right, spot on, and I guess we could, like, I mean, we've all read the books, and but I guess it's not common knowledge. I mean, because like on Pottermore it talks about a little bit more about it, but how the Dursleys just do not like the Lily and James, just because they had a kind of an argument, I guess, last time they saw them, and they're very estranged. So it's like. And I guess that kind of leads to why they're so set on being more normal than the average human being. They don't want anything exciting. So I guess, like, without that secondhand view, it would seem very odd for anyone who's first reading this book. Like, why would you want to lead such a mundane life? But I guess that's just what they like. All right, so we're introduced to the Vernon, and I guess he kind of gets freaked out um, because he hears people talking about his family, and I guess my first thought about that was it just seems very. I would be very weirded out if if you hear like these strangely dressed people talking about members of your family, and not only that, but members of your family that you have sworn to, completely put off from your life or to never speak about, I guess.
Well, the whole thing is very strange. Like, he sees people walking around in strange cloaks. He sees animals looking at signs as if they were reading them. He sees owls flying through the air. It's become kind of a strange day, but I don't think... Yeah, it isn't until they actually kind of have Vernon overhear what those characters are saying and about how a certain Dark Lord is finally gone, then you kind of realize that maybe they're coming out into the open because it's essentially a celebration. That they're so jubilant with what's happened that they don't even mind kind of almost accidentally exposing themselves out for the mundane world.
Yeah. Is like one old man hugs him, like actually grabs him and hugs him after he almost knocks him down. It's like, what's going on? The things that what kind of struck me in this was that the movie is so prevalent in my mind. I've it's kind of fixed a picture of the characters and what they look like in your mind, but I had to remind myself that Vernon and Petunia and James and Lily and Sirius are all about 21 years old. I think it's either 21 or 22.
At this point in the story, I never really thought of that Vernon and Petunia being so young. Or do you mean like as of their generation?
Well, I think that Vernon and Petunia would be a little bit older because obviously Petunia's Lily's older sister.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's ever explicitly stated how old Vernon is, but I can't imagine him being much older than 25. And then going around thinking like, oh, look at the get up of these young people. Oh, and like Vernon, you are a young person, please.
He's like the soul of an old man shoved into his body. But yeah, it's hard to kind of divorce the movies have kind of shaped in your mind and painted as the characters. But yeah, it's I find that very interesting that not only is he like this old soul in this young guy, but he's also successful. There you go. I guess he's also kind of successful in his work because he has his own office and he seems to be in charge of people and he's yelling at people and I guess putting people in their places. And he's managing all these. He's managing at least a couple employees. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That it's just kind of it's just interesting to see what they're like before Harry comes into their lives because they're pretty happy. He's got a kid that he loves, that he and his wife love dearly, and they're living their life. What makes them happy? It's very interesting.
Well, if it wasn't for the apparent disdain for the Potter family, you would kind of imagine Vernon and Petunia to be a pretty normal family. Like, they have a kid, they're just living their lives, but you kind of know right from the beginning that Petunia in particular isn't very fond of her sister and her family, and there's that kind of like deep growing resentment, especially considering how apparently strange her sister Lily was and the family that she kind of got herself involved with. And it's weird because you would have to imagine that readers who read this book know it's a fantasy series, and yet they kind of start off with showing you how almost too realistic the real world is. And it makes for a nice contrast, but it's also kind of like that whole opening into the fantasy world where the reader is going to be like, wow, I can't believe I have to get through this like first boring chapter. But at the same time, it's also kind of like a reflection of what the rest of the book is going to be contrasted to. Or contrasted with.
I kind of get this this vibe, this kind of Lemony Snicket vibe from this like at least the first book. Because like it goes really, really hard on just describing the behavior of people as kooky or very dreary and mundane. It's he hasn't even let me think it is right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
author of the series of unfortunate events. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, let's get into the more magical part of the chapter. So this whole time, when Vernon leaves for work and when he comes back, there's a cat staring at him the entire time, or not the entire time, but it's either eyeballing him or it's reading a map, which I thought was just it's just kind of like a funny image of just like imagining this cat just sitting on a map, just reading it. But we get this whole conversation between him and Petunia about the Potters, and they're so disconnected from the Potter family that Vernon doesn't even know what his own nephew's name is, and he's afraid to even mention Lily's name. But that kind of puts Petunia in a bad mood. But they later go to bed, and we get the first glimpse into the character of Albus Dumbledore.
And it's the first time that he's named at all in the chapter. It's like very, very early on, J.K. Rowling knew that she was going to make Albus into a really important character to the point where he's specifically referred to by name. He isn't just kind of like, his name isn't introduced as per the conversation. It's like, this man's name is Albus Dumbledore.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is kind of like a powerful introduction for a character. It's not like, it's not them introducing themselves to another character or anything. Yeah, that is kind of, there's a very, it's very, I don't know how to, I guess, say it. It's very specific in how it introduces him as a character. But here's our description of him. He's tall, thin, very old. His hair and beard are silver and long enough to tuck into his belt. He's wearing long robes, a purple cloak, and high-heeled buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. So how do you guys think you think they kind of succeeded in nailing the portrayal of Dumbledore in the movies?
A little bit, because I remember from the first two movies it was Richard Harris playing Dumbledore, and he kind of had that spry, youngish look to his older age, and I thought he was a really good portrayal.
I wouldn't say spry, but yeah.
But he did have bright and sparkling eyes.
Yeah, he did.
Like, he just, his eyes were always smiling. Gosh.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I can't remember if we discussed this in the first episode, but I like Michael Gambon as Dumbledore. But there is kind of like this, they both really portray the two different sides of Dumbledore very well and better than the other, I think, where Richard Harris is very warm and inviting, and he's very wise and kindly, but on the other hand, I can't imagine him as being this ultra powerful wizard, this mad genius. That's what I think Michael Gambon really captured was, he's this mad genius kind of guy. He's kind of cut off from other people, and he's eccentric. But he also has a lot of energy as well.
Mm-hmm. And obviously later on in the book series, it is revealed that Dumbledore does have that edge, which I feel like Gambon is more evocative of than Rich Harris would be. I mean, I guess we can't really say because obviously he passed away before we got a chance to see it. But I know that the fandom tends to hate on Michael Gambon because of the "did you put an arrow in the golden fire" or whatever. But I think that as an actor, you don't want to go into something and just completely copy what the person's role that you're reprising was before, because you want to bring something different to it and show that you can think up your own ideas for characters and things like that. So I don't have a massive issue with Michael Gambon as Dumbledore either.
Oh, very nice.
Not really, yeah. I really like Michael Gambon too. Like, I think he's very like he has a very authoritative tone to his nature. He's very stern, but he does show moments of kindness, and I really love the voice that goes with it. Like I always whenever I read the books, I always imagine Michael Gambon's voice in my head narrating the lines or
Yeah, me too.
telling the lines.
And I think he actually really captures that weird side of Dumbledore very well. Um, that I don't think they ever really explored with Richard Harris, especially in book three. I mean, in movie three, he's very weird, and it's like, okay, this guy is kind of strange, and I get why some people are in reverence of him, but as well as like, is he off his rocker? But so soon, like right after we get introduction to Albus Dumbledore, we get an introduction to the cat, who's actually a person, Professor Minerva McGonagall. One of my favorite characters, and definitely my favorite teacher.
I like how
Yeah, I think they also
Sorry, you go ahead, man. Don't
go
worry.
on.
No. You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, I was gonna
What did you
say,
want to say?
she starts off with kind of explaining to Dumbledore how it's kind of reckless for the other people of their kind to kind of go out in the world, kind of like celebrating and kind of accidentally getting like the notice of the Muggles or which they call the normal people in the world, and how it's kind of a reflection, or it kind of shows what the dynamic is like between the magical people and the non-magical people. That essentially they're not really supposed to know, or the magical people don't want the non-magical people to know that they exist.
Yeah, I remember thinking the first time I read this book, with her introduction, it's a weird thing that for me to remember of all things, because I was so young. But I remember not quite liking her at first because I've never been into people who were very like very strict with the rules and very very just like strict in with their dress, how they dress and how they appear and talk to people. But very quickly, I kind of like her already because we get her reaction to the death of the Potters and everything like that. Raquel, what do you think of Professor McGonagall?
I adore her, and I think one of the things that I like about her introduction in this chapter is that she just appears very driven. Like she's been sat on this wall all day because she also wait. I'm gonna start saying that again. Lol. Wait, come back. I have things I want to say, and yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm the worst person that you could have picked to do this.
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
But anyway, so I like that in this chapter, not only does it show that she's driven, but also that she understands Dumbledore very well. So she has already heard rumours that James and Lily have been killed, and she knows, well, she doesn't know, but she guesses that Dumbledore is going to bring Harry to the Dursleys. So she makes a point of going there and sitting there all day. She's been sat on this wall all day, just waiting to hear news about baby Harry and whether the rumours are true about James and Lily. And, she's grieving, and she was friends with these 21-year-olds who are now dead, and she's very saddened by their loss. And I love her.
Yeah, me too. And that's something that they don't mention in the books, is that if you look at her Pottermore profile, it does say that Lily and James were her all-time favorite characters. I mean, not characters, but all-time favorite students. And that kind of, it says a lot. That's something that I also picked up in this chapter, was just that Dumbledore says he didn't expect to see her there. He didn't ask her to be there. But yet, like you said, she's been sitting there all day, the entire day. It's now midnight. She was there in the morning, early in the morning, all the way to midnight. And she's just there because she cared so much about these two people.
Yeah.
She knows Dumbledore so well to know that he'll be there that night with Harry. It says a lot about her. I mean, it's discipline I wouldn't have had. I probably would have have left for a couple hours or something, but
definitely.
She's pretty amazing. She's a pretty cool character.
I like her for all those reasons that you guys mentioned. She seems to have a bit of a stern side, but she also has a very like soft emotional side when she's speaking about James and Lily, and that really kind of made me sympathize for her because you could tell that she really treasured these two people who are now have gone and they leave behind a son, and she doesn't know really like how to feel about the whole thing because later on, as we kind of continue discussing the chapter, she's being told by Dumbledore that the only family that young Harry has left is the Dursleys, and she's kind of shocked and dismayed to find that all that time that she spent looking at them, she found them to be so unlike anybody else that she knows.
Yeah, and it kind of hits me now that I think that she may have. I mean, she is a little bit outraged when Dumbledore says he's going to leave Harry with them, but I think she kind of suspected that was the plan because I feel like that's another one of the reasons that she's been sitting there all day was to kind of get a feel for the family and where Harry would be growing up. So I think it's I also like really liked how they're J.K. Rowling is really good at setting things up for later on. She likes to plant Easter eggs, or I think it's a combination of both, where she lays Easter eggs, or she really just is just so descriptive that she can later go back to a previous book and go, oh, okay, so maybe I'll use this object for this later on in the book, or for this book that I'm writing right now. But she does mention Godric's Hollow. She does mention Sirius Black and Deadless Diggle, who ends up being part of the Order of the Phoenix and protects Harry at one point. It's some pretty solid world building if you think about it.
Plus, we've also got the introduction of a certain very large man who kind of helps bring the baby to Privet Drive with the help of a motorcycle. And that's, of course, Hagrid, who is going to be a huge and very important character, not just figuratively, but literally in the books.
Yeah, it's I always kind of like laugh and roll my eyes at this introduction to Hagrid because there's like, I don't know about you, but there's no way I'd be able to sleep when a motorcycle that loud comes swooping in on my street.
Yeah. And if I was a baby, I would not be asleep on this motorcycle.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm surprised Harry didn't grow up with tinnitus or something.
It's a magical motorcycle. Who knows? It might have automatic sound or audio or engine dampeners.
And he's always bigger than I'm always like kind of taken back by how big he is. Like, it describes him. He's twice as tall as a regular guy. I mean, I think in the movies they make him a little bit shorter, maybe not call so much attention to himself, but he's probably around like what, between 9 and 11 feet tall.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 times
as
wide.
Oh, yeah.
5 times as wide.
He's a huge dude.
Jeez, that would kind of suck, I mean, you have to you basically live your life in like a glass house, you can't. I guess that's why he works so well, kind of outside of Hogwarts in his own little cottage and, working with animals and stuff. But, you kind of live your life in that glass house. You can't really, it really would affect the way that you interact with the people around you, especially Muggles. So yeah, and that was right now.
No worries. I was gonna ask you if you guys had any thoughts about the whole idea of Hagrid borrowing the motorcycle from Sirius Black and then later on bringing it back to him. When you guys first read that chapter, what were you guys thinking of the character of Sirius Black as a person? Do you think he was like a cool guy, a cool wizard who happened to be a wizard who happened to have a motorcycle?
Yeah, I remember thinking like that's super cool because I always wanted a motorcycle growing up. So this thought that there's not only a motorcycle being used in this chapter, but it flies. I remember thinking that it's how hardcore Sirius must be that he has a flying bike. But I I think I put him out of my mind pretty quickly. But when I was reading the chapter this week, um, I, I think it was around book two where she started to lay out the entire story and what characters are super important and everything. But I was hoping, I was kind of looking to see if there was any reaction from Dumbledore because he would be the person to know or suspect that Sirius Black betrayed them because he cast the Fidelius charm on the Potter's house and he knew that Sirius was a secret keeper. But at this point, no one else suspects a thing about him.
I don't think that J.K. Rowling actually had a massive storyline in place. I know that she's claimed that she has, but like going back to what you said earlier about how whether it was just good world building or her coming back and thinking, oh, I could use this person, I definitely think it's the latter, which is why we don't get a reaction from Dumbledore or anything.
Yeah.
But
well, I think
I don't know.
No, you're fine. I mean, I think you're right. I think it's kind of, again, I think it's both because we know that she's shown her notes on like the lists of characters and everything, and that's just things that you go through when you write a book. You establish your characters and who's going to do what, and I believe her when she said that she from the beginning she wanted Ron and Hermione to be together in the end. I know people like to say that she didn't because she kind of regrets the fan service, or I guess it was just wish fulfillment on her part. But she never says she regretted putting them together. And there's a lot of other evidence too. She's a big fan of alchemy. I know that sounds very random, but actually not really because the book is called The Philosopher's Stone. But there's this like really interesting article written by this guy about how alchemy relates to the books, and it talks about how Harry and Ron and Hermione are the three essential elements to producing gold or something, and it talks about how the two elements that simplify Ron and Hermione often clash, but they are essential and they actually go quite well together in the end. But there's things like those relationships and Harry's relationship with Ginny. She said that she had also always planned initially for them to be together. So I think there are some. So I think it's, like I said, a bit of both. Where she had things that she wanted and she knew were important, like Sirius Black. I think she knew was important to the Potters, but just maybe not that he would be framed as the betrayer or anything like that.
For sure. I did have one more question for you guys. There's a part where in the chapter where McGonagall and Dumbledore talk about how who was finally defeated, and Dumbledore kind of just says his name casually, and she flinches, and the whole idea is that he's essentially gone. But when you guys were first reading the chapter, would you guys have any idea of what you think the main conflict of the book was going to be about? Did you always kind of figure that Voldemort would come back as the main villain of the story? Did you kind of think that maybe there was going to be pretenders who would try to like take over and become like the next Dark Lord or whatever? What were your thoughts of where you think the story was going?
Sorry, I'm biting a cushion because I pinched my finger in my chair, and it hurts really bad. It hurts so bad.
That's
I
rough.
slammed my finger in a door. It hurts so bad. But anyways, continue. Raquel, why don't you go ahead and...
Sure. Well, I guess, I don't know, I feel like child me probably had, while she was a fairly astute reader, she didn't like make massive predictions like that. I don't know. I think none of those options were what Rachel thought when she was little. I think she was just like, wow, Voldemort, that's a cool word. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Gosh, I'm so embarrassed.
No worries. As for myself, I was kind of under the impression that the main villain of the series would be some sort of like child of Voldemort, or like Voldemort would have his kids around and they would kind of like become like the rivals to Harry Potter. And in my imagination, it'd be like a battle between light and dark, between figuring out what the mysteries were of how young Harry managed to survive. And I had all these kind of like thoughts in my head that maybe there would be like a secret dark wizard among in the school who would grow up and actually be revealed to be Voldemort's son or daughter. That was always my kind of initial thoughts.
I had no idea. I At this point, I was still hung up on the motorcycle, I think, and I was caught up in thinking about it'd be cool to have an owl and stuff like that, and it didn't really that this dark wizard had a hold over this country for 11 years. As it says in this chapter, he was in power for 11 years. This is a long time. Yeah, it's how long did World War II go on? That was what, like 5 years, was it?
I think it was 6 years, 39 to 45. That'd be around about 6 years.
Okay. So yeah, that's almost twice as long as World War II was going on. Which is crazy to think about. I mean, it definitely wasn't the same scale at all. Actually, Voldemort, when it comes to dark wizards, he didn't even really touch the scale that Grindelwald was on.
He's kind of weedy.
Yeah, have you seen that scale of villains where Emperor Palpatine took over the galaxy and such character the United States or something, and it's like Voldemort struggled to keep a country and got defeated at a school. Couldn't even take a school. But yeah, it's so yeah, like as a kid, I didn't really grasp that. Voldemort's impact was, or what his later role would be. I didn't even think of him as having an organization or anything like that. Wow, my finger's turning purple. Ow. But yeah, so yeah, I was just interested in the three-headed dog on the cover of the book, and the flying broomsticks and all that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Oh, so this was a question I had. So how long was it before you guys realized that these books took place in the 80s through the 90s?
Never.
Because it wasn't until 2 years ago when I picked up the books again that I later found out, after I'd finished the series, rereading the series, that the book takes... Harry was born in, 1980 or 1981 or something?
80.
And then... Yeah, so in 1980, and then the book ends in 1997. I got no indication of that in the book. I don't think they ever say that here such and
I think
such.
the only time dates are referenced properly are on to set a proper time frame for the events in the book is in James and Lily's graves in book 7, and I think that's the only time it's actually referenced to give you any indication of when it is set. So I also did not realize it was happening in the 90s.
Yeah, me neither. I had no idea until I read on the internet that the books are supposed to take place in the 90s. I guess it kind of makes sense because the book was written in 97, which means that the whole time that J.K. Rowling was thinking and writing this all up, it would eventually lead to the point where she would actually start putting her pen to paper.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I remember thinking when I saw the third movie, that's when I really started to take notice of their clothing, and I was like, why are they wearing such weird old shoes? And that's not very...
I mean, I don't think the movies are trying to set them in the 90s. I think that's just English clothing in the early 90s.
That's what the English dress like, yeah.
Yeah, I just remember Daniel Radcliffe wearing those. I don't know how to describe them. They're just those clunky big shoes that like I don't know. I just remember thinking, wow, like who dressed these people?
Yeah, I think that's just genuinely early noughties English fashion. But I think it doesn't, like, the time that it is set doesn't really have any impact on the events of the book, if that makes sense, apart from maybe, like, with the rise of technology in the last few years. If they'd been set now, things might have been different. I don't know, but...
All right, so that is most of the chapter. But where do you guys rank this book in the entire series?
Ooh, that's a good question.
For me, this book and The Chamber of Secrets are my two lowest books. Just because Philosopher's Stone, it's clear that when you read the rest of the series that she didn't have a clear idea of what she wanted to do with the series. So it kind of stands apart from the other books, and it kind of feels like there's a reboot. With Chamber of Secrets, that kind of feels like the first book. And yeah, so like there's not, for me, it's one of the more boring books for me because some of the world building is irrelevant and is never brought up again. Some of it is brought up again, but it's not really connected to anything yet, so it's not too interesting for me. But it's still a lot of fun. I get a lot of good laughs out of the first two books still, but yeah. So for me, they would probably rank near the bottom.
Yeah, same for me too. Like, I think I do like Chamber of Secrets more than Philosopher's Stone, but I wouldn't say Philosopher's Stone is in any way a low point of the series. It's just the introduction. It's one of the shorter books. It's one of like the most barest in terms of content and material to expand upon or think about. It still has a pretty solid plot. I still remember the chess stuff from the climax of the story, which I thought was always interesting. That's always something that I remember. And I don't know. I guess on a technical sense, I would probably put this near the bottom of my list of Harry Potter books, but it's still really good.
Look, let's just be honest. I put this at the bottom of my list. I'll just say this is seventh out of all the books for me.
I don't know. I don't have a list. Should I have made a list? I feel like I haven't read it long enough to probably make a list. I'll give you my list at the end. But I agree that I'd argue that the first three are actually more episodic than the rest, I guess. And then, I guess, when it properly took off as a franchise, J.K. Rowling was like, okay, let's build in more story, in the third one. I don't know. But yeah, I agree that the first two are very. You could just read them as standalone novels, and it wouldn't really make that much of a difference to your enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask before we close out the episode?
And I don't think so. I think I'm good with this chapter. Anything else you guys want to add?
I've always liked her writing style at this point.
So yeah, I guess that's going to be the end of our first chapter by chapter read, or I guess discussion of the books. The Boy Who Lived. A little bit rocky, I know, but
it's all good.
As we get this figured out, hopefully we can, just jump into a good discussion. And I thought this was a good discussion.
Yeah, but we'll get more of a format at some point.
There'll be more content and more things that we can talk about as the chapters go on.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, there's only so much we can discuss with the first chapter. So next week will be
the Vanishing Black.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, BlackManta, for spearheading the discussion. And thank you so much, Raquel, for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
And we'll probably...
I'm so glad you're here, Raquel, because you make me laugh. Not in a bad way. Like, you just make me laugh. You always make me laugh. And you bring a lot of great sharing a good laugh, and I love your thoughts.
And then you wouldn't know that the clothes in the films are just really bad English fashion. How would you know that if it weren't for me?
I wouldn't. That's just the truth. I wouldn't know that. So thank you. No, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Raquel. You're always bringing an interesting angle.
I'm always bringing a lot.
A lot of interesting discussion.
Different angles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
different
okay.
angle. Yeah.
I understand what you said now. I was talking while you said it, and I didn't hear it, but now just my mind's caught up with the time. Oh gosh.
No worries. Thank you guys so much. This has been episode 3 of Fantastic Chats. I'm your host, Neophant, and once again, thank you again so much for listening.
Lastly, make sure you like and subscribe, and comment. Most importantly, comment and let us know how we can improve and what things that you would like to hear discussed.
Yeah, and let us know your views on Chapter 1 of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. We want to know what all of y'all are thinking.
Yeah.
Alright, thanks guys, and take care.